Alright guys, I'm going to do a quick little review of the Shinko 805, 804 knobby tires for big adventure bikes. When I purchased these tires, as far as I can tell, they're only available in the 17-inch rear wheel size and 19-inch front wheel size. So, tire size was kind of limited there. I have almost 6,000 miles, 5,700 miles to be exact, on these tires, and they're holding up pretty well. I'm pretty religious about checking my tire pressures. I usually run them at max, which is 33 psi. At almost 6,000 miles, the rear is getting pretty close to retirement, but mileage-wise is good. I'm pretty surprised. I was reading about how a lot of people were struggling to get 5,000 and over 5,000 miles out of tires like this, but this is the first set of knobby tires that I've run on my V-Strom. I've always run the 90-10 tires, the Metzler Torrents, the Aniki tires. Those are great tires in the wet. There's a surprising amount of traction in the wet. So one thing I have to say about these tires is that they're probably the worst wet tires I've ever ridden on. I'm used to, there's the race bike. I got a set of race reins up there. So I'm used to sport tires in the wet, and I'm used to the 90-10 tires for this bike in the wet. Compared to those more road biased tires, these tires are pretty bad. When it's wet out, when you get any sort of lean, it just feels like these tires dance across the wet pavement. But not very confidence inspiring in the wet. But I have to say, on the flip side of that, when it's dry out, these tires, since the compound's so soft, it seems like they grip surprisingly well on the dry pavement. The poor wet weather performance is just a characteristic of the tire. I guess another characteristic of the tire is, might be kind of hard to tell what the profile is like, but whenever you lean this bike over, it just wants to drop over. If that makes sense, I catch myself having to, mid-corner correct and compensate for how much the bike is wanting to drop and lean over by itself. So that's definitely a different feel than the more road biased tires. But other than the very poor wet weather traction, I gotta say I really like these tires. I personally think it's worth the compromise running these tires, at least in the dry months. It's getting close to winter time. I'm planning a long trip here in the wintertime, so here when these tires get a little more toasted, I'm going to switch these out for a set of the newer Torrents Metzler Torrents Next tires. So yeah, but as soon as it gets out of the cold months and warms up a little bit, dries up a little bit here in Seattle, I'm definitely switching back and slapping some knobbies on again. But yeah, overall, I think it's a great tire, especially for the price point. Compared to the other knobbies, these tires are less than $100 a piece. So yeah, it's pretty great price, and the performance in the dry is great. And of course, off-road traction is outstanding. As you can see, I don't really do any hardcore off-roading with this bike. I don't have the skid plate here on the bottom. So, what this bike really does off-road is only fire roads and Forest Service roads. So, but yeah,